Welcome back, guys and gals. Matty back again. Today we are rocking no hat and a terrible hairline. And surprise, surprise, today we are talking more backpacking gear. And specifically today we are talking backpacking gear I wish I would have done differently as a beginner backpacker. With a twist! And the twist on this is we're not actually going to talk about gear that I personally would have changed when I first started out backpacking, because I've been backpacking for nearly 20 years now. And the gear that I would have changed out is pretty much every single thing that I carried when I first started backpacking. But a bunch of my friends have recently got into backpacking over the last couple years. So I thought it would be a fun little twist to ask a bunch of my friends who have recently got into backpacking over the last couple years if they could go back and give themselves some advice when they first started out backpacking. What gear would they go with, or what gear would they change and do differently? So I've got a list here. Let's just jump right into it. And the first thing that we're going to talk about, and almost everybody mentioned this one, has to do with footwear. And this holds true whether or not you are going to go with a traditional hiking boot or if you're going to go with trail runners. And what pretty much everybody said was getting a quality pair of footwear and making sure that it fits properly. And going along with that, getting a good quality pair of socks to go with your footwear of choice. And when I dove a little bit deeper and I asked everybody the reasoning behind their desire to change their footwear and their socks when they first started out backpacking, almost everybody said the main concern and their main issue had to do with blisters. The biggest cause of blisters out on trail tends to be improperly fitting footwear and bad socks. It may be extremely tempting to walk in your local outdoor retailer and head right to the discount or clearance section and find the cheapest pair of boots that seems to fit you decently well and just throw those on and head out on trail. Everybody that I know that went that route very, very quickly realized what a poor choice it was, and almost everybody I know very quickly ended up going and spending the money buying themselves a quality pair of boots or a quality pair of trail runners and going out and picking up some good socks to go with it. There's a reason why when you go onto a bunch of different backpacking pages or backpacking online forums, nearly everybody is suggesting the same type of socks, be it the Darn Toughs or the Injinjis or the Smart Wool or the Icebreakers. There is a reason why these socks are very highly suggested and very highly reviewed amongst the backpacking community. There's no other way to put it. Buying yourself a good quality pair of socks and a good quality pair of footwear is going to help yourself in the long run. It's probably the most important piece of gear when it comes to backpacking, is getting yourself a quality pair of footwear. And that leads us nicely into the second most common answer when it came to polling my friends on gear they wish they would have changed out when they first got started into backpacking. And it has to do with their pack itself. Probably the second most important item when it comes to a backpacking trip. The biggest change that everybody said they would have made to their backpack when it came to first starting out backpacking is just going with a smaller backpack itself. And I've personally seen this transition with so many of my friends, as I've pretty much been hiking with them almost since the very beginning of sort of their venture into backpacking. And I've seen almost all of them transition from these mammoth 75 to 90 liter backpacks down to sport 45 to 50 liter packs and being significantly more comfortable on trail. For some reason, it seems to be suggested to people when they first start out backpacking to look at getting a 70 to 80 liter backpack. And I don't really understand why. Tend to get it in your mind that, well, I have the space to carry all this extra stuff, so I may as well pack it. And next thing you know, you're headed out for a 1 or 2 night backpacking trip with a 45 or 50 liter backpack, and you tend to just have a terrible time out on trail. I know there's going to be somebody out there who's going to tell me that, oh, I carry a 50 liter backpack for single night trips and it's totally fine. And hey, if that works for you, awesome. But in my experience, the 50 liter backpacks, 0% fun to carry out on a backpacking trip, carrying all that extra unnecessary gear that you just don't end up using in the long run. So going with a smaller backpack is going to force you to think a little bit more about the stuff you're carrying, and you're going to carry the stuff that's necessary, not necessarily stuff that you think you're going to need. And in the long run, you're honestly not going to use that stuff and you're not going to pull it out of your backpack. And that is why going with a smaller backpack was the second most popular thing when it came to polling my friends on gear that they would have changed out when they first got started out backpacking. This next one is probably not going to surprise anybody who's been watching my channel for a bit, because this is one that I have ranted and raved about many times over the last couple years, and I'm sure I have directly influenced a couple of my friends into making the switch. And what we're talking about has to do with water filtration. Now, when a lot of my friends first got started out backpacking, they were using stuff like Steripens and these little pump filters. The very first water filter I ever got and used was one of those MSR pump filters. Those things are so ridiculously inefficient. I personally wish I never would have spent the money on it. I wish I would have went with a cheaper option like the Sawyer Squeeze or a gravity system. The big issue with pump filters is they have so many moving parts and there's so many parts that can break and wear out. You've got all these little O-rings and gaskets and the little hinges, and inevitably something is going to break, and in my experience they tend to clog up significantly faster than any other kind of filter that I've seen people use out on trail. And the next most popular filter that my friends started out using when they first got into backpacking was these little Steripens. If you're not sure what a Steripen is, it's a little UV light filter, and you turn it on and you put it in your water and you wave it around for 30 seconds to a minute or whatever the timer is, and the UV light essentially sterilizes any of the bacteria or parasites that are in the water. Now, the biggest drawback to something like the Steripen is it almost forces you to carry a bulky, heavy Nalgene bottle out on a backpacking trip. Because of the size of it, you need the wide mouth opening like you find on a Nalgene bottle. They simply do not fit into the smaller openings of something like, say, a smart water bottle. So be it ease of use, or not wanting to carry heavy, bulky Nalgene bottles over the years, or simply being tired of hearing Matty rant and rave about the Katadyn BeFree, over the last couple of years, I have seen most of my friends transition to using a squeeze type water filter or a gravity type water filter. Now, if you guys have watched any of my backpacking trip videos, you guys have probably noticed I tend to love doing group backpacking trips. And the way that we filter water on our group backpacking trips is we will usually carry a couple of gravity water filter systems, just because we can filter more water at a time. So we'll get a couple gravity filters going, hung up in the tree. And if anybody needs water, you just go up to the gravity filter, open up the valve, filter out water for yourself. Another extremely popular answer when I asked my friends what kind of gear they would change when they first got started out backpacking had to do with knives out on trail. Now, for whatever reason, it seems to be an extremely popular choice to carry a bulky fixed blade knife when you first get started out backpacking. But in my experience, I have seen almost everybody I hike with shift away from carrying these bulky knives like Mora knives or just, some kind of survival knife, to carrying a really small folding knife. Not everybody I hike with is carrying a ridiculously tiny 1 ounce knife like I carry. In all of my years backpacking, all I have honestly ever used a knife for is cutting a little bit of cordage, or cutting open a plastic bag, or trimming up a bandage or something like that. And a tiny little knife like this is more than sufficient for anything you are ever going to encounter out there on a backpacking trip. As I'm rambling on, talking about gear changes that my friends would have made, if any of you guys and gals are interested in gear changes and mistakes that I have made out on trail, what I will do for you guys is I will link that video up right here. So when you guys are done watching this one, head on over there, check that video out. And as always, guys, I am Matty. Thank you guys so dang much for watching, and I will see you guys on the next one.